Alright, well, I'd like to start by talking about your parents. What happened to them, and you, was tragic. But when I looked through the notes, I didn't get a sense that you've processed that emotionally. When I read your account of what happened, it came across as, well, more of an objective rather than a subjective narrative. Oh, sorry. You don't know what that means, do you? What I mean is that the way you told the story is more like you were reading something from a book than you were talking about your own past. That makes me think you've cut yourself off from it. Is that right? Not sure?
Hello everyone, my name is Kavin Catastrophe, and this is my Five Nights at Freddy hidden story. We learned a lot this season, from understanding how unnecessarily complicated the Springlock suit is, how powerful the abilities of the illusion disc are, how Scott uses canon and separate continuity to tell a story, Vanessa's actual job at Fazbear Entertainment, a secret security team within the PizzaPlex, and most importantly, we discovered that Fazbear Entertainment might have a secret enemy known as the Fazbear Frights Group pretending to be them.
What sorcery is this? Who are you?
I am your dark side, and I possess all the powers that you wield. And I have only one purpose in my existence: to destroy you.
I'm hoping with this video, I can put everything we have gathered so far to tell a story that I think is happening in Five Nights at Freddy's. But before we begin, I do want to express my deep gratitude for my cousin who's been helping me out a great deal when it comes to this series. I truly wouldn't have gotten this far without him. Despite not being a Fnaf fan, his interpretation and perspective has gotten me to see Fnaf in a completely different light, and I truly appreciate that.
Oh, it's okay. I didn't get it the first time either.
What?
So without further ado, let's begin.
This is gonna be fun.
So, in my latest video, when it came to analyzing Retro CD7's therapy session, we learned that Vanessa used a technique known as the evasive response to dodge a question that the therapist had asked. Why would Vanessa do something like that?
Lana doesn't like therapy.
Hey, I never said that. I just don't love the idea of a person who knows everything about you and can use that information against you. Not that I have trust issues.
We also learned that Vanessa dislikes lying, and we delved into what canon and separate continuity means for Fnaf. Go ahead and check that out. And while we did get a lot of information, we never did finish analyzing that retro CD. We stopped at the treehouse question. Well, now we're gonna finish analyzing it. So, let's see what else we can learn from this retro CD.
Okay, then I'm going to show you some ink blots, like this one. And I want you to tell me the first thing it makes you think of. Here we go. What do you see here?
A treehouse.
It does look sort of like a treehouse, doesn't it? Do you like treehouses?
I like to sit outside and read.
That's good. Now, what about this one?
A beetle.
Really? Looks like a face to me. That's very interesting.
So, what did we learn?
Regarding the first ink block test, Vanessa said she saw a treehouse, which the therapist agreed with. Well, sort of. The therapist said it sort of looked like a treehouse.
They're the same picture.
Wrong! This means that while both Vanessa and the therapist agree that the first ink block test looks like a treehouse, the therapist herself doesn't 100% agree.
Feels like that might be important.
With the second ink block test, Vanessa said she saw a beetle, while the therapist said she saw a face. What the therapist has just done was confirm to the listener that while both Vanessa and the therapist are looking at the same picture, they both see entirely different things.
Okay.
The listener does not know what these pictures look like, so she is just confirming to them that the ink block test does indeed work. Which, yes, that is what an ink block test is supposed to do. Actually, I guess I'm kind of just assuming that everyone who's watching this video knows what an ink block test is. I guess I should try to explain that.
Let the learning begin.
An ink block test is like a special game where individuals are shown a series of ink blocks and are asked to describe what they see in these ambiguous shapes.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun!
The idea behind the test is that people project their thoughts, feelings, and experiences onto these images. Basically, you get to use your imagination and tell what each ink block looks like.
Okay, that's cool.
Your answers are then analyzed to gain insight into how you think or feel and to find any, problems that you may or may not be aware of.
No. I don't make mistakes. I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
Look, I know it has the word test in it, but there are no right or wrong answers here. This game is just a way for doctors to understand you better so they can help fix what's wrong with you up here.
I work a lot.
I know you do. Maybe more than you should. More free time would do you good. Do you have a hobby? No? Perhaps we could find one for you. Like a sport? No? I have a craft space in my basement. Maybe I could come up with something you could learn to do.
I don't like dark basements.
Everybody is different when it comes to processing information. Depending on how we live our lives, we all interpret things differently. And while I know it seems unbelievable that someone would have a drastically different mindset than your own, it's basically what makes you and that other person special. And that is what the ink block test does, to discover what makes you so special.
Oh, okay, I get it now.
You know, it's kind of funny. The ink block test and Fnaf have a lot in common. Fnaf is a special game where we take the limited information that is given to us, interpret it through our unique lenses, and try to uncover the hidden layers and meanings within. The hidden story, you could say.
Boo!
And you know what? We're going to use that concept to analyze the story of GGY from Tales of the PizzaPlex, and perhaps have a better understanding of who is truly behind the stories of Five Nights at Freddy's. We follow the story of Tony. Tony is an average kid that no one understands. His father was a well-paid accountant for a big corporation and was accused of embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from them. His father denied the charges, but instead of believing in him, the jury decided to believe in the prosecutor's argument instead. Tony's father was sentenced for 20 years with a fine he could not possibly pay off. Tony, thinking them to be wrong, wanted to investigate who actually stole the money from the company, but his father told him not to and promised him he would never look into who stole the money, to which Tony agreed.
Oh my god, I don't know how long this will last, but I'm gonna savor every minute.
You see, ever since he was little, Tony has always dreamed of being a reporter. He loved journalism so much that his parents supported him by giving him a digital camera. He would go around the neighborhood, taking pictures and making fake little newspapers, reporting on anything he saw. These were harmless at first, but then he would start reporting on actual people and their personal lives, a move that everyone did not appreciate.
Did I just catch you wanting to be shit?
Sweet Jesus!
His parents were forced to tell Tony to stop reporting on real-life stories and focus on writing fiction. Tony, not understanding the consequences of his actions, asked why. Tony's father explained, "Writing about real-life events can be tricky, son. It's hard to get all of the facts, and if you don't get them right, or even if you do, you can cause problems for people." Tony didn't understand back then, but he does now, and he doesn't care.
Don't worry about it. Let's just see where this goes.
Now in the present, Tony, along with his friends Greg and Ellis, are in a creative writing class. They get a school assignment from their teacher to write a fictional mystery story. Tony asks if this story can be based on non-fiction, and the teacher said no. He could let reality spark his imagination, but wanted him to look past the real world. Tony, who believes reality is more interesting than fiction, ignores the teacher's request.
Everyone holds you back because they're afraid of your raw, natural ability. They want you small and nice, blissfully unaware of your true potential.
Throughout the story, Tony will go on to try and uncover the real-life mystery of GGY, a mysterious kid who keeps getting extremely high scores within the real-life PizzaPlex. During his adventures, we get to learn a little bit more about Tony's mindset. Tony has spent the first 11 years of his life living in a nice, big house with an even bigger backyard and one of the best neighborhoods in town. When Tony was born, his mother never needed to work. But now that his dad was in prison and falsely accused for stealing money, Tony and his mother lost all of that luxury. Now Tony has to work hard to afford to go to the PizzaPlex.
Oh, boo-hoo!
Tony's friends, who came from well-off families, didn't understand the struggles most people have to carry. Life came easy to kids like them. But Tony knew the hardship. Life had beaten him down. He was more mature than the other kids.
You serious?
During his investigation on GGY, he would gain a lot of information, but the problem is, he would only get half of that information about what was happening. He would then fill in the blanks with his own theories and ideas. His father warned him about this, but just like he always does, it was an advice that Tony chose to ignore. Being the son of a convicted embezzler had given Tony a pretty thick skin. His dad's case had gotten a lot of media attention. News people would constantly camp outside his front lawn, saying terrible lies about his father. Tony learned quickly that caring about what other people think was a surefire way to be miserable.
Desperate to help his friend, but feeling powerless. How frustrating. It won't be long before frustration turns to anger. Fly away, my little Akuma, and evilize him.
Like I said before, Five Nights at Freddy's is like an ink block. Depending on how you live your life, we all interpret things differently. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for me, when I look at the story, the way how I see it may be a little different than how somebody else might see the story.
I look down on existence from a much higher perspective than you do.
Investigative journalism is important to our society, but it can be dangerous. That is what Tony's father said. Why did Tony's father tell his son this?
That is for you to decide.
One of Tony's stories when he was younger was about Mr. Markham, one of his neighbors. The story was, how did Mr. Markham get so many channels without cable? After Tony distributed that story around the neighborhood, some official-looking men visited Markham's home. Tony's father's tires was later slashed.
Overreact much?
So Tony's story definitely got Mr. Markham in trouble. The believed message of this story is that Tony finding out the truth gets him and his family in trouble.
That's one perspective.
But I don't think that is the theme of this story. I don't know how Mr. Markham gets so many channels without cable, and I'm pretty sure Tony doesn't either. He didn't find out the truth. He just asked a question with sinister implications. In the time that we are living in now, there are many legit ways to have many channels without cable. But that question made Mr. Markham look bad, and now the entire neighborhood will start looking at him differently. Tony's story ruined this poor man's reputation.
Overreact much?
But hey, who cares? This is Tony's story. Tony is the protagonist. Tony is the hero. I shouldn't question his actions. I should be rooting for him.
Stupid. Oh man, you don't get to rush this.
Let's go back to the embezzlement case. Tony's father was accused of stealing money. Tony's father claimed he is innocent, and the story makes it clear that the jury had to listen to the prosecutor's evidence before deciding a verdict. They did, and they found Tony's father guilty. Now, any child would believe in their father. Tony thinks they got the wrong guy. Since Tony is the protagonist of this story, I guess I should believe him. An innocent man can be charged guilty of a crime he didn't commit. That's clearly what the narrative wants me to believe. But here's the thing. If I wanted to know if Tony's father was guilty, if I wanted to come up with my own conclusion, the story would have allowed me to listen to the prosecutor's evidence. But I'm not allowed to do that. I'm reading the story through Tony's perspective, through Tony's eyes. The story so desperately wants me to believe in a 12-year-old child who is more strongly connected to the accuser than a group of 12 people who listened to the case and made their decision.
What are you implying?
Tony is telling this story.
This is quite a shock! On the other hand, it's not surprising in the least.
When I read your account of what happened, it came across as, well, more of an objective rather than a subjective narrative. What I mean is that the way you told the story is more like you were reading something from a book than you were talking about your own past. That makes me think you've cut yourself off from it. Is that right?
Say it in English, Doc.
An objective narrative is when the storyteller presents events or information without letting their own biases, feelings, or personal experiences influence their depiction. It focuses on presenting the facts and details that can be verified by others.
Her one choice gave birth to a whole new history and gave the multiverse a new hero. As for me, these are my stories. I observe all that transpires here, but I do not, cannot, will not interfere, for I am the Watcher.
A subjective narrative, on the other hand, involves a personal viewpoint, including the narrator's feelings, opinions, and interpretation. It reflects the individual's personal perspective and can be influenced by their emotions and personal biases. Basically, an objective narrative is based on facts, while a subjective narrative is based on feelings or opinions.
All those worlds, all that suffering, and you just watched.
I swore an oath. I cannot exert my will in the natural order of things. I cannot intervene.
I am the natural order of things. I will bring peace. It is my purpose. You lack the will to stop me.
The story of GGY presents itself as an objective narrative, yet it is inherently a subjective one. Although it appears to be written from an impartial viewpoint, in reality, the protagonist himself narrates the story, which makes his story look more fact than fiction.
Do you believe your own lies, all this lofty crap? You can't build utopia by hunting down people.
We know you can't understand the beauty of this.
It's beyond the limitations of your feeble mind.
I would not have a problem with this story if the narrator came out and said in the beginning that he was the protagonist of this tale. But he knows the moment that is revealed, any information that is used in this tale will now be completely subjective. If a 12-year-old kid is the one that's telling the story of GGY, then the accuracy and facts within this narrative is already flawed. I can't base my investigation on the words of a child. If I'm going to find out the truth, I need to disconnect myself from the protagonist and see things with my own eyes, not Tony's. Given Tony's age and his current mindset, I will be assisting him in this investigation. Since I am much more older, I will be able to process the information that Tony is gathering correctly.
No! This is not how it was supposed to end!
I don't need a babysitter.
Clearly you do. Don't worry, Tony. We can still have fun. I'm just here to make sure we gather all of the facts and not cause any problems for people.
Maybe you should ask yourself how you really feel about your past. Maybe you should give yourself a chance to really look at what happened and let yourself be upset about it, so you can let it go.
So, GGY has earned quite the reputation within the PizzaPlex. While most kids would want their achievements to be known by everyone, GGY doesn't. Nobody has ever seen them play, and no one knows if GGY is even a boy or a girl. But if there's one thing that everyone agrees, is that GGY
must be a kid. The PizzaPlex is made for kids.
Wrong! While I understand why people would come to that conclusion, you limit your imagination and investigation on who GGY is. You've seen seniors play the arcade machines before, and I know for a fact that the PizzaPlex isn't just meant for kids. It's meant for people of all ages. Although Fazbear Entertainment seems to be keeping their different age groups apart.
Smart move.
From this point on, you are now looking for a kid, and any new evidence you find will be what you believe a kid is capable of.
Could you dumb it down a shade?
Imagine this. You think GGY is a kid and goes to school, right? So you're picturing GGY's day like a story, where after school, like other kids, GGY could go to the PizzaPlex. But since no one has ever seen them play during that time, your only option is that GGY must be playing these games at night.
An unfortunate perspective.
Now, if we consider GGY to be an adult, a person who plays the game during the time that kids are in school, then we have a lot more to work with.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that.
Yeah, well, that's, it's a factor.
It's okay, Tony. You was looking at things from a kid's perspective. It's not your fault. You didn't know any better.
But what bothers me about what I read is that the messages you're getting seem very manipulative in nature. What you might not know is that this person who's been sending you messages has been hacking into your personal files too. These are the same files I have here. These files are full of details about your life. Do you know what that means? This person who is contacting you knows a lot about you.
Lots of people know more than I do. Sometimes I need to listen.
The next thing that Tony learns about GGY is that according to an employee named Finbar, the techs had done a diagnostics on the arcade machines that GGY has played. And they say they couldn't find any trace of a hack. The machines are as they should be. But Tony still believes GGY hacked the machines because
now is the time for you to fulfill your part of the agreement, and here's my plan.
Some hackers are just that good.
Oh, you are such a child.
Okay, Tony, while yes, some hackers are so good that they can hack things without people's knowledge, you were answered by the people of Fazbear Entertainment themselves that GGY wasn't hacking the machines. You can't just ignore that answer and say, well, you may have done a scan, but GGY could be so good you just didn't notice.
Is there someone you can call to come take this job?
You are ignoring what people tell you because it goes against who you believe GGY is.
That is the security guard. She can help.
No, I don't trust her.
Why not?
I don't know who she is, but she's trying to get me.
Accordingly, state laws permit you to sue anyone who illegally interferes with your property. If someone's on your land without your consent, then you may have an action called trespass against them. A trespass occurs when someone is intentionally and wrongfully on your property. The trespasser may have either intended to trespass or may have simply overstayed your permission. A trespasser can be sued in both civil and criminal courts. The state can bring criminal trespass charges, and the property owner or occupier can bring a civil suit for damages.
Overreact much?
You believe your son is safe? I will find him.
I will reclaim what you have taken from us.
I told you she was after me.
Technically, I didn't lie.
Not technically.
Anyway, instead of jumping to conclusions that Fazbear Entertainment doesn't know when their security is being breached, as you are heavily suggesting,
I don't make mistakes. I'm not just like the rest of you.
Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and consider other explanations for GGY's remarkable high scores. Because there are indeed alternate possibilities.
How many did you see?
14,605,000.
We're just gonna focus on 3. The first possibility could be that GGY might simply have more time to invest in these games. While their high scores are impressive, they're not beyond the realm of possibility. To a casual player, these achievements might seem impossible, but for a dedicated gamer who spends considerable time beyond just their evenings playing these games, attaining such scores is feasible.
Dad, come on. I was never gonna get good enough to beat you. I mean, how am I supposed to get better if I only get to play a few minutes every night and you've had like 100 years? You were holding me back so bad. If you weren't, I would have beat you by now.
The second possibility is that there's a chance GGY has prior experience with these games before. In one of the duffel bag messages in Security Breach, we learn the origins of an arcade machine known as Princess Quest.
PQ1 maint log. Maintenance log. There's a Princess Quest 1 machine somewhere in the building. An actual stand-up arcade. I guess the devs pulled it from that old mobile game. Why port to arcade?
So, Fazbear Entertainment took an old mobile game, because I guess Princess Quest is considered old at this point, and ported it into a stand-up arcade machine.
Can they do that?
Yes, they can. And Fazbear Entertainment isn't the only company that does this.
Oh, hey, what's up? So I was just playing a cell phone game, but you know what's kind of interesting is cell phone games over the past, 5 or 10 years have turned into arcade games. So we're gonna hang out in this arcade right now. This is Mavericks in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we're gonna see how many cell phone games converted to arcade games there are here at this location.
Now, this doesn't happen often. Normally, it's supposed to be the other way around. But bringing a popular mobile game to the arcade market can introduce the game to a new audience who might not play mobile games.
Hey, what game's that?
This is no game. This is my life.
Yeah, it's cool looking, but it still just looks like a game.
Now, why am I highlighting the shift from mobile to arcade games? If Fazbear Entertainment has transformed Princess Quest from a mobile app into an arcade attraction in the PizzaPlex, it's quite possible that they applied that same magic to the other games. These arcade games might originally have been mobile games that many, including GGY, are already familiar with. The catch? Kids aren't clued in.
I don't understand. Of course not. You're what, 14? Too young to drive and not in college yet?
This mobile to arcade makeover isn't just for kicks. It's a strategic move to reintroduce a new wave of gamers to these classic mobile adventures. Now you might be wondering, why would Fazbear Entertainment bother with such a strategy?
No, not really.
It boils down to perception. Back then, kids were conditioned to be skeptical of mobile games, thanks to some subjective influence.
We know that Fazbear Entertainment has developed something of a bad reputation over the last few decades, and while it's true that some stories associated with our name were loosely based on actual events, the majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending.
Fazbear Entertainment understands how it feels to have their reputation destroyed by fake news. Are you listening, Tony? By transforming these mobile games and putting them into a VR or arcade setting, they have cleverly reinvented those games. Suddenly, a game that was once hated when connected to a phone becomes the new craze when put in a different setting. It's not the game itself that's changed, but where and how it's played, transforming its appeal entirely.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. It was right where you said it would be. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
And what's funny is that people hated the mobile games because you had to pay to get access to the cooler stuff. Well, you literally have to pay to play those games in arcade. Nothing's changed, it's just the setting.
You may not recognize me at first, but I assure you, it's still me. I always come back.
Now, with the powers of Spider-Man, New York will bow to my genius!
Who is it that breaks your fall, puts out the flames, and saves your children?
They love me. Which means GGY has the advantage, as he's already mastered these games on a mobile platform before effortlessly conquering them on the arcade versions at the PizzaPlex. Which is kinda sad, as GGY is basically comparing their skills to a bunch of newcomers who is being reintroduced to these older games.
Bravo, Mr. Uno. You skillfully managed to outwit a bunch of children. Question is, do you have what it takes to play with the big boys?
And the third and final possibility is that Tony and his friends may be a victim of a thing called the contrast effect. The contrast effect is a...
Could you dumb it down a shade?
Okay, imagine you have two apples. One is a little bit bigger than the other, not by much. But if you put them side by side, the smaller one looks even tinier and the bigger one looks even larger, like a giant apple next to a tiny apple. If you was looking at them separately, you wouldn't have even noticed the difference. But since they are right next to each other, the differences in their size stands out more. A toy may look super cheap if it's standing right next to a very expensive one. A girl may look less attractive when standing next to a pretty one. A man might come off as lame when standing next to someone really awesome. This is what we call the contrast effect. It's like a trick your eyes and brain play on you to make the differences seem bigger or more important when two things are right next to each other.
He really is faster than I am!
But that's not speed. He's disappearing.
Whoa!
GGY's scores are not that high, but since you are comparing their scores to the one next to theirs, it's coming off as higher than it actually is. I don't know how difficult these games are, or the skill level of each player, but one thing's for sure, we shouldn't assume GGY is doing something sinister just because we lack the knowledge or the skill level to do it ourselves.
Not long ago, I made a video detailing Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach speedrunning and how runners were already able to complete the game in under 6 minutes by exploiting several glitches.
As you can tell, there are so many different possibilities to explore when it comes to trying to figure out who GGY is. And I would not have attempted to explore those possibilities if I hadn't learned that Tony is the one that wrote this story.
My son so dumb, IQ 21.
Now that I know that the narrator is also a character within the story of Fnaf, it allows me to look for any potential biases within that narrative.
What the hell does that mean?
What I mean is, when someone, the character in the story, is telling you what happened, you get to see everything from their point of view. It's like putting on their glasses and seeing the world exactly how they do. But, just like in real life, they may not see everything perfectly, and they might think some things are more important than others. This means you have to be a bit of a detective and figure out what's really happening, which can be exciting and annoying.
What? All they've done all night is try to hurt me!
They get what they deserve.
There must be a good explanation. They are not capable of hurting a guest. None of us are.
Okay, listen. You were sleeping, so I opened the stomach hatch and climbed inside.
They are not capable of hurting a guest. How odd. Your guest profile is unknown to me. They are not capable of hurting a guest.
Turns out, there's no record of him.
They are not capable of hurting a guest.
Okay, I get it.
I also have to decipher whether or not they are telling the truth, as they may not tell you everything, or they might see things differently than they actually are. Understanding how they feel, looking for any mistakes, trying to figure out where in their lives caused them to see things this way is all important. The narrator has so much power over the story in our perspective, and trying to figure out what is fact and what is subjective is a big part of discovering what's going on in Fnaf.
Freddy, check out these pictures. Chica has some sort of special voice box. Roxy has new eyes. And Monty was given better claws. We have to get these. We can upgrade you.
This isn't a game.
These are Roxy's eyes?
Well, yeah. There was an accident in the raceway.
Is she okay?
Give me back my eyes! Well, nothing seems to stop her.
Winners don't give up!
Overreact much?
I will find him!
He's just a kid!
I don't know, I'm just a kid.
You don't blame the child. He didn't know any better.
I found him earlier and locked him up in Lost and Found.
That is great news. He can be returned to his parents.
He can't. Turns out, there's no record of him.
How unfortunate.
This is one of the problems with having an unknown protagonist. Since I have no information on him, I don't know how mentally messed up in the head he truly is. I don't know his last name. I don't know where he's from. I don't have no origin story. And that's dangerous. All I get is what I see. A child that needs to be protected. That is what the person behind this story has given me. I don't need to know anything else about this child. He can be anything I want him to be. The perfect protagonist for a video game.
No!
I know there's still good in you, Hal.
You're so naive, Roxy. You see the good in everybody even when it's not there. You're living a fantasy. There is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there is no Queen of England. This is the real world, and you need to wake up!
But while I don't have access to Gregory's files, I do have Tony's. We are not done with GGY just yet. There was still so much more to learn about Tony, so much more mistakes to be found.
I want to be just like you.
You will be, son.
Tony, you attempted to manipulate me, tried to force me to see the world from your perspective as fact. That is unforgivable.
Overreact.
You put all of your thoughts, feelings, and experiences into this tale. Do you know what that means?
Could you dumb it down a shade?
It means you should have listened to your mother. You should have focused on writing fiction. It was safer. Because now I have everything I need to prove to everyone that you are just as much of a criminal as your father.
According to these message logs, you've been working pretty late over the last couple of weeks. Or not working. Are you ready to talk about who you're interacting with? From what I can see here, the interaction is getting more serious. Is it distracting you from your work?
My work is important. There's a non-disclosure agreement.
And once I'm finished with you, I'll be one step closer to finding out who is the person behind Five Nights at Freddy's.
They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer who supposedly made up a bunch of crazy stories that tarnished the brand.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Such pitiful insolence! The moment you challenged me was the moment you sealed your fate. This battle is not yet over.
But anyway, these are just my interpretation of Five Nights at Freddy's. There were a million of theories out there, and all I'm doing is presenting you with my own. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and remember,
there is more going on here than you realize.
Are you having